Okay, today's video, guys, is going to be really short. This is 5.2 quadratic formula. And when you get to class, we will work the last problem together, but we're also going to watch a fun video to help you remember the quadratic formula, because that's the part of this that's important. You have to know the quadratic formula to use the quadratic formula. Okay, so the first thing we need to talk about is standard form. You have to be able to find your A, B, and C when you're given an equation. The A is always the number before the x squared, B is always the number before x, and C is the number that doesn't have the x. So looking at our first example, we have x squared minus 12x plus 20. So in front of the x squared is invisible 1. So A is 1, B is 12, and C is 20. Once you have that, you just plug it into the equation that's given. X equals negative b, so that's negative 12, plus or minus the square root, b squared, so that's 12 squared. Now remember, if that b is negative, you're going to have to put that in parentheses, or you're going to get the wrong answer. Minus 4 times a, which is 1, times c, which is 20. And that is all over 2 times a, and a is 1. So now you're going to have to grab your calculator, and we're going to put this part right here. And you can include the square root part of that. We're going to put that in the calculator, and we want to get just that part. And if you're using one of the yellow calculators, you can just put the square root sign and then put everything else in it with the parentheses. So I'm going to have the square root, and then I'm going to have 12 squared minus 4, parentheses 1, parentheses 20, and that's 8. So now we have x equals negative 12 plus 8 over 2, because 2 times 1 is 2, and x equals negative 12 minus 8 over 2. And just like we talked about in the lesson before, when you have an x squared, you almost always have 2 answers. So solve each one. Negative 12 plus 8 divided by 2, so x is negative 2. And negative 12 minus 8 divided by 2, and x is negative 10. It's okay when you do this part, if you get a decimal, round it to a couple decimal places. 2 decimal places would probably be good. But don't think you have the wrong answer just because it's a decimal. That does sometimes happen. Okay, so let's try another example. A is negative 2, it's the one before the x squared. B is 9, the number before the x. And C, okay, so we're going to have to stop for just a second because this does not equal 0. So we're going to have to rearrange this just like we did on the problems in the last lesson. We're going to subtract 18 from both sides. That's going to have to go right there. So negative 2x squared plus 9x minus 18 equals 0. So now our C is negative 18. Taking everything and putting it into the formula. So let's go back here. I'm going to shrink it down so you can see the formula. See where we're plugging this into. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared. And b isn't negative, that's why it isn't in parentheses. But if it was, you'd have to put it in parentheses. Minus 4 times a times c all over 2 times a. So once again, take all of this, put it in your calculator, see what you get. Square root of 9 squared minus 4 parentheses negative 2 parentheses negative 18. And I got no real answers. So if that happens, we're going to check it again first to make sure we didn't type something in wrong. And then if you check it again and you get no real answers, then this is one of those where you put no real solution. Now always check to make sure because you could have typed it wrong and it does have answers. Okay, so we'll do the last one in class and we'll watch the fun video and then we'll do some practice problems.